You are now streaming worldwide on RadioOnFire.com and the Radio on Fire app.
All right, so welcome back. Diamond K in here, and I am joined by Amber Ivey, and we're going to talk to her. She is a candidate, an independent candidate in Maryland's 7th Congressional District. Amber, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your audience.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you could join me. So I want to dive right in. Being an independent candidate, bipartisanship is something that you would definitely need to possess. What is it about your journey that makes you ready to work in between the aisles of the Democrats and the Republicans?
So the funny thing about that is I was raised in an Army family. So my parents, my dad was in the Army and my mom was in the Navy, but she got out not long after me and my brother were born. And being in the Army means you're moving every 2 to 3 years of your life. So I've lived from everywhere as far west as Arizona to across the Atlantic Ocean in Germany. And as a young person, moving every 2 to 3 years, that means you had to adjust to new environments very quickly. You had to build friendships very quickly. You had to learn how to navigate and work with people from all different types of culture. Arizona is very different from Germany. Oklahoma, I live there too, is different from Mississippi and all these other different places I had to live in. So as a kid, I really got that in my foundation of working with people and learning how to meet new folks very quickly and try to find common ground. But as an adult, most of the positions I've been in have been in positions that are really focused on data or operations, which are very black and white issues, right? There is not there's no emotional attachment to those issues. And due to my work in government performance, I've worked with Democrats and Republicans as far west as Colorado, Utah, as well as even here on the East Coast in Virginia, Maryland, and things like that to get things done for people. I've worked in Texas with Republicans. Me as a Black woman with curly hair has gone into some of the most red places and helped them implement technology and work through different issues that come up with access to justice or things like that that are normally blue issues, right? But showing folks how we can come together to get a common goal across for people. So I've had experience doing that. In Maryland, I was originally working under O'Malley's administration, former Governor O'Malley in the state stat program. And once his administration was over, I stayed on board and helped the Governor Hogan's administration switch that program to the Governor's Office of Performance Improvement. For me, it doesn't matter what party's in place. It matters that the people are getting what they need. And I've learned to figure out how to find common ground to make sure we're all focused on a common ground and not the things that we have that are not the same and that keep us apart. Right. And I found that when you focus on common ground and the what's in it for me for people, you can normally get folks to commit and work together.
Right. This current pandemic, the coronavirus has brought about. You talk about preparing for the threats of today, tomorrow. Mm-hmm. How do you propose to do that?
So the interesting thing about COVID, and I don't know if I wrote something about this, but people who went through COVID, if they did not have a technology play or if they were not an essential organization, are struggling right now. What Correct. Do I mean by that? If companies were not able to activate work from home technology implemented solutions, they were not able to keep their business running. Or if you were essential, you were allowed to keep your business running. But the problem with that is COVID showed us that we were able to literally wipe out a lot of our economic progress that we've had over the last few years simply because people did not have technology in place. So think about that. Now imagine a world where technology is actually growing faster. We're getting all these new tools are going. Tech companies are pushing stuff out. We're learning so many other different things. Imagine a world where us, the people, don't have the skills to get jobs in that world. And imagine what happens with that unemployment rate, right? Yeah. So we already seen the unemployment rate jump in Maryland District 7 or this region, right? We're around like 10, 11%. And we were, I think before this, we were between like 3 and 5, depending on where you were within the different jurisdictions. So we had that jump up. So my concern is that we have to be focused on what technology will do. By 2030 in our region, 43% of the jobs are possibly going to be automized by technology, and no one's talking about it. And we already know we have issues with unemployment and skills, specifically in Baltimore City and even in the county, that we haven't been addressing. So what I would propose is that we really look at the future of work, and we look at how healthcare and benefits should no longer be attached to your job, right? If people are probably not going to be in jobs for 30 years, they're probably going to be in more gig economy jobs or jobs where they're in for 2 and 3 years. Folks should not have to change their benefits every 2 to 3 years, right? You have to change your healthcare company, you have to change your 401k, you have to change your dental insurance. Like, that shouldn't be happening. That stuff should not be attached to an individual's job. As it relates to skills, passing legislation that incentivizes individuals and businesses to get the training they need, as well as looking at how we do our curriculum in schools. We're training kids on a lot of issues that they're not going to get jobs in the next 10 years. Like, let's be honest about that. Some things have become obsolete. They're just not there anymore. But yet we keep teaching kids these skills that don't make sense. Talk about college, right? How many people have college degrees that they never use? It's a large percentage. And we need to make sure that folks have, keep some of those skills still there, but also we have to make sure we're looking forward to the future and incentivizing things like apprenticeships, making sure that folks have access to lifelong learning. We're not going to be able to sit in this box of pre-K to 12th grade, and then if you get college, it's going to have to be a lifetime, because technology is moving so fast. Skills are going to have to adopt in that way. And if leaders aren't thinking about that, we're going to leave behind most of the time people who are brown and Black and who do not have the income and the education to think ahead. We need to be thinking ahead for folks to make sure that gap does not get bigger.
Right.
And one quick thing I wanted to add is the technology piece is with infrastructure. If you don't have technology infrastructure, broadband internet, I know Governor Hogan just talked about passing a budget that's focused on that, because they saw what happened with kids when kids were at home and did not have access to internet or digital tools. Digital tools and the internet are like the light bulb compared to a candlestick. Kids who don't have access to the internet and digital tools have a candlestick doing their homework, while everyone else has electricity. Like, we need to think about that as far as our time is related. And we cannot allow kids to live like that and people to have a situation where they don't have the tools they need to succeed in this very tech-driven economy.
Right. I agree with that. And I mean, it's super, super important. And this pandemic has really exposed a lot of good and bad things. I think, like you said, it's really forced people to become more remote, and location independent is something that I'm very big on. As it relates to COVID, where do you wear a mask in public?
Yes, I do. I also live with an autoimmune condition, but I'm also on the other side of that. I don't want to be a person, let's say I get it, I don't want to pass that to someone who's elderly and risk their life. Like, whether I agree with the mask or not, I just, for a personal and society-wide safety, I think we all should just put it on. It's not going to kill anyone. Right.
No, exactly. I agree with that. As far as some of the other social things that are going on, protest, what were your thoughts on the George Floyd murder?
So I will be honest with you, when I first started watching, I had to stop. Like, there was so much trauma that came out of my being or my body that I had to stop. I couldn't finish it the first week. I had to come back. I think the second week I came back to watch the whole thing. Yeah. And it hurt and broke me because people were there to intervene, and it still happened. Like, it wasn't one of those situations where it happened so fast that like no one had time to jump in, but people literally were like, stop, like, please get off of him. Folks who came in who said, I am in a medical or in a fire person or person working in the fire department. I'm in this field, check his pulse, do this. And still the man was able to sit there without any emotion and literally crush someone's neck. And that for me it broke something in me. And I think it broke something in the fabric of this country, because we're seeing with the protests, not even just here in America, but across the whole country or world, where people realize that there's something here. And I think COVID and being at home and not having anything else to do but look at TV and look at social media because you're out of things to do, right? People who normally don't look at TV are watching TV, they're watching the news. People who normally they're not on social media all day are on social media, and it forced Americans and people who normally don't see these things on their timeline on a regular basis to actually go seek these things out or be flooded with these different graphics and images. And George Floyd's death is such a pain point in this country right now. But I'm also happy that in his death, that he has sparked a movement that I believe we will never be able to return back from. And I think having the combination of COVID with what was happening with us not being able to have access to normal, like our life where we can actually ignore things like that. Granted, the Black community, we don't ignore it, we see it all the time. Yeah. But for those who normally, it's not their day-to-day life, they had to see it. And if you're human, you responded to that. And right. I'll leave it at that.
Right, absolutely. Out of that, there have been other killings and the such. Another movement that has spawned from this George Floyd murder is the defund the police and different microscopes being placed on the police. Where do you sit with that?
So one of the things I believe in as a person who's an independent, I am fiscally conservative, I'm socially liberal, or liberal in the social areas. I do not believe any government entity should operate in a way where they're allowed to freely operate in the budget and there's no audit. There's no checking back to see if it's working. There's no making sure that whatever money we're giving them is going somewhere and actually being utilized in a way that's helpful. I believe that every single dollar that American taxpayers spend in government budgets needs to be held accountable for. And in reality, the police budgets have not been held accountable for. Like there hasn't been a look at the budgets to see, hey, why do we have X amount of dollars going here? If this is the population, this is our crime rate, this is et cetera. What normally happens is money is just put there and they don't think about that. The other problem is police are doing jobs they should never have been doing in the first place. Police are not mental health specialists. Police are not the best people when it comes to handling neighbor issues. And me and my neighbor are arguing, why are we calling the police? Like, you all need to go to mediation. Like, there's other places that you need to go to. So all these issues that the police are now handling and are funded to handle when they do not have the training to handle those things. So I do believe that we have to look at their budgets and look at them, audit them, and pull the money out that is being used where they should not be doing medical health mental health calls. That should be going to a mental health organization. We know there's not enough money in mental health. We know a lot of people who are in jail are there because of mental health issues. Like there's a whole movement right now on mental health in jails because so many of our jails are filled with people with mental health issues who couldn't get the care they needed. So if we see these issues are happening, we need to move that money. As it relates to police violence, if we know individuals have multiple disciplinary records, in every job I've been in, it was like a 3-strike rule or less and you're out. But cops are allowed to strike 1, strike 2, strike 20, and then they're telling humans not to make one mistake. So I'm like, how are you enforcing a standard that you yourself can't follow? So we have to make sure that those things are open to the public. If they are government employees, which they are, their disciplinary record should be open to the public. So when they transfer from job to job, the company or city, or city or state who's hiring them knows what's going on. Like there's so many levels that can happen here. I think the words defund the police scare people. Yeah. All defund the police means is look at the budget, reallocate the budget, reduce the budget, and move those funds in a place that would actually be better bang for their buck. And there's ways to do that through data and evaluation to figure out if that money is working or not. We evaluate so many other areas. We want to evaluate social programs when it's a mother receiving WIC, but we're not going to evaluate the police.
Right. They are on that with whatever that
those
happens.
Evaluations are almost attached to all of that. Or someone's always saying, well, they're wasting money. I'm like, that's literally milk and cereal. This is someone dying.
Right.
Like there's a big.
I mean, people living in that house. There's a father in there. You know that. They're definitely putting a microscope on that. And I think that the biggest problem with this movement is the branding and the messaging. Like you said, defund scares people, and the opponents of that are able to quickly say that it means abolish.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, people don't want to abolish the police.
No, we do not.
Right.
My brother was a military police. He's a correctional officer now. Like, I have friends who are in the force. That is not something we've ever said.
Yeah,
That's not the message.
So, as far as District 7, that position was held long term by Elijah Cummings, Kwesi Mfume before that, ironically. What type of job do you think that Elijah Cummings did in that position?
So one of the things I want to say before I say my statement, I believe Elijah Cummings is someone I value from a distance. Granted, I never knew him personally. I value from a distance for the powerhouse he was as it related to Baltimore City and as it related to being in Congress as a voice that people respected and listened to. One of the things that I think is important in the individual who gets this position next for the full term is that they look at our whole district. We have Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Howard County.
Right.
I've heard from folks as I'm like doing text messaging and talking to folks that they felt left out. Specifically Baltimore County, Howard County, felt like no one ever reaches out to them because they know Baltimore City is the one who's going to choose the winner, or they assume. And because of that, a lot of people have been disenfranchised. I live in Baltimore City, so of course Baltimore City is at the heart of everything that I've done since I moved up to this area or what have you. But I also understand that we need a representative that's going to make sure we represent or make sure that everyone else feels like their voice is heard as well. The other thing I think that's important in this position is that we have people who are thinking about the issues of the future. Representative Cummings was in an era where he moved through like those key areas that were happening after like passing the crime bill, or people before him passed the crime bill. He came in after that. So a lot of things happened in the country with drugs and all these different things that were going on. There was a different movement there. The movement of the future looks different. So I think we have to be very careful when we think about the leaders of the future, that they're focusing on the issues of the future and how they align with the issues of today. Like I said, for where he was in that time period, that made sense. But I think we have to look at the areas where we could have improved in, how we could have brought more investments probably to the city. We've lost a lot of people in the city. Our population is the lowest that it's been in almost 100 years or something like that. Yeah. Companies are leaving. We don't have a Fortune 500 in this region. Why not? We have the biggest port. We have access to Washington, D.C. and New York. There's no reason why we don't have a Fortune 500 company headquartered in MD-7. So there are a lot of things that I think that just need to happen. Our infrastructure, there's issues with that. So I think that we just have to make sure that whoever we put in this office is thinking about those things, looking to the past for advice, right? Looking to those leaders who are going to be mentors and who can help us to not do the same things that happened in the past, but making sure that we have an eye forward and that our windshield is the future and not going backwards.
No, I agree with that, and you're probably not going to say it, so I will say it that I talked to Congressman Cummings several times, and him and Kwesi Mfume are almost analog, but we are in a digital world. You know what I'm saying? And so I was very concerned about Kwesi Mfume getting the position. I thought that so much time had passed, and I mean, just for social media, I don't know how active he was on social media. He wasn't really prior to his candidacy, and I'm not sure if he's actually the one that is pushing the buttons for his campaign now. But I definitely think that the person who sits in the seat has to be able to communicate and understand what the constituents are, how they communicate, and what they're seeing and thinking and feeling. Very important. Very important. So is that one of the deciding factors for you jumping in as an independent in this? Yeah.
So back in October, when this all happened, when Representative Cummings passed away, I wasn't even thinking about running for office this soon. Eventually I wanted to, but I wanted to do it like, oh, one day I'll run for city council just to help and give back. So this position was not even on my radar at that level. And like when I was younger, I was like, oh yeah, I can do that when I'm 55, 60 or what have you. And because I didn't think about it like that, right? I was like my job, I like what I was doing. But then when he passed away, I realized that was an opportunity that may not happen again anytime soon. Meaning that the opening of that position. So I just thought about it and considered it. And then I started seeing who was jumping out there, and I was waiting for someone to jump out that was going to be, like you said, that innovative leader that could reach the people in the city, that could bring some hope back to the city. And I saw like some of it bubbling up, but then when Representative Mfume reclaimed the seat, which I thought was right. I'm just going to be very honest with that. I thought that was right for a person to take a seat that was in the middle of session, right? Who already knew how to do it, to take it for that time period. That makes the most sense. It takes more time
on paper. On paper, you're right. It does make sense.
That's what I'm saying. On paper, yes, purely on paper. If someone's been there before, they did it. We can jump them in. Don't cause any issues with Congress working because they're already having issues working, right? Period. Point blank. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But for the next term, for the next congressional session, I think we need leadership that is thinking about the future. And I've heard him speak about mentoring other folks and things like that. And I think this is a great time for leaders like him to come in and bring that knowledge they have and wrap themselves around the next generation of leaders, whether that's, and I know he does this at a local level, at least from what I've seen from a distance, wrap themselves around that next leader. I would love to see him jump in. I'm not saying for me, but anyone, I would love to see him jump in and really get behind a person who is filled with fire, is filled with innovation, and let them learn a little bit from him, because we can't leave that generation behind. They've done it before. So it's a beauty that we have to work together, where there's this group who's like innovative, ready to fight, ready to go, and have that energy that he had back when he was 36, right, and ran. And now he needs to pass on all the knowledge so that the next group can run. And that's Congress as a whole. I think there's a problem when you can sit in a position for 30 plus years.
Yeah,
some people in
problem.
Congress have been there a very long time. And it really saddened me when they had the hearings on like Facebook and Google, and they didn't understand like the basics of technology and a platform. Like their staff didn't even get them up to speed. And a lot of their staff are young people. So I'm like,
correct. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. When you look at the gridlock in DC, this is a big part of it. A big part of it is you have these politicians, these elderly senior citizen politicians who've been there for years. They don't like this one. They don't like this one, and it's a lot of things have become personal. It's a lot of personal. Yeah, and nothing gets done because of these grudges. And I really would love to see some term limits, but I doubt if they would pass that, because that would limit their power. But I would love to see term limits.
I agree with you. That's one thing I think needs to happen, period. Like as the new blood gets in there, the new blood doesn't need to become like what's happening and be okay with staying in position that long. Like term limits should be in place. That's why the founders put in place 2-year election cycle for representatives, because they were like, things are going to change so quickly. Even back then. Things are going to change so quickly, you're going to have someone every 2 years. And what are we getting? 30, 40 years of people being in the same position.
Yeah. So let's talk about this petition that you are gathering signatures for. How can people sign the petition, and why should they?
So I'll start with the why should you. So one of the things that really got me back in 2012, I was driving down MLK Boulevard and I saw, probably like 50 plus signs that said vote Democrat, straight down the middle median with nothing else on it. So that made me upset. And granted, like I'm independent, but I voted for Democrats. Like, so that's, you only have two options, right? So it really upset me that they didn't offer people anything. No information, no, hey, if you do this, this is what I'm gonna promise to you, or anything. It was just vote Democrat. And in this city, like part of my commercial that I put out that hopefully is gonna air today on TV, so I'm happy about that. But one of the things I said is the statistics like around murder, vacancy rates, unemployment, and poverty were lower in 1983 when I was born than in 2020. 83 was a very different time, right? Where you
Definitely.
expect things to be higher and things going on because we're coming out of different eras with drugs and things like that. How is it now that in 2020, with as much economic enhancement and success that the country's feeling and all these things are happening, Baltimore City in particular is better off in 83 than it is in 2020. That is a problem. And we've continued to elect in this city leadership that often says they're going to do things for us, and they often look like us. But then when it comes time to write the check or cash the check bounces because the corner still looks the same as it did 30 years ago.
And it literally bounces. Literally. They don't know where the money is. Yeah.
And jobs are not coming in for certain communities. Like, you're seeing certain parts getting the benefit of it. And then the people who are going out there to put the people on the ballot, nothing has happened for them. So I'm not saying just to vote for me because I'm this other person, but I'm a person who has experience working to get things done. Like, I am a person that will move mountains to get things done. Someone used to tell me Amber could put a gorilla in Hawaii because it's darn near impossible to do that. Because if I have a mission and a goal and a focus, I drive and I get it done. And I've had to go into states where I'm working with people who don't know anything about me and I'm an outsider, and I know how to get in there and make sure that people know we all have something in common and find a thing we have in common, whether it's on a policy level or personal level, so that we can build a relationship to get things done for people. And that's something I value. Wherever I work, I go in there to get things done. And we need leadership right now that's going to go in and get things done. Congress is not working. This decade, we've signed into law less laws than we have since the 70s or since we've been able to track. How are we not being effective? I remember looking at the number of laws they had passed in January before the COVID hit. They were at under 2% of laws had passed, and normally it's like 4%, which is still low, but that's a big drop. Like, that's a lot, like a huge number of laws that they're not passing, and they're not working together.
The next step is 0.
Thank you. So with that being said, we do need people in place who are going to work together to get things done. We need to unite the uniters. It's something one of a group I work with called Compassionate America. They're really trying to get people to start thinking about how can we be a more compassionate country to get things done. They're okay because they're making $100 fill-in-the-blank dollars and fighting, and then people at the bottom are struggling, not having access to healthcare. Childcare rates are skyrocketing in Maryland. It's cheaper to go to college in public school or public college than to go to a daycare facility center.
Right.
That doesn't make sense. So I say all those things to say I am coming in with ideas that are for the now and for the future to make sure that we do not keep having these same conversations. And if I don't do what I say do, I will step down my own self. Like, you don't have to push me out in 30 years. I don't believe in staying in office for that long. I believe you get in and do your 8 years should be the max anyone stays in any position. Get something done, one thing you're focused on done, which for me is really looking at how the future work is going to change our communities, our work, and our families, and all those things, and making sure that I say something different happened in this city because of me being in office. And if I can't produce, I don't need to be there. And if you're interested in what I'm doing, you can go to ivy2020.com. That's IVEY2020.com. A pop-up will come up on the screen that says sign the petition, and you can help to put me on the ballot in November.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. So people, again, can go to ivy2020.com to do that. And they have to do that by when?
Let me give you earlier than that. July 31st.
Do that ASAP.
Yesterday.
How have you found campaigning during a pandemic to be?
It is the weirdest thing ever. But the benefit is, because of technology, and most people will say this, I have been able to touch or reach out to more people in the pandemic than I ever would have been able to reach.
Absolutely.
Like, there's no way in the world you can hit 100,000 people in the short amount of time I could hit 100,000 phone numbers, right?
Yes.
So I am, granted, I would rather be out there meeting people, but due to the ability to use technology, we're still able to, at least from a distance, check in on people and say, hey, how are you doing? We're just saying hi to see you if you're okay. Making sure folks know that we're here and letting folks know about the campaign.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you taking time to speak with me.
Thank you. This was painless. So
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Again, Amber Ivey is petitioning to run as an independent candidate, MD-7, and you can sign that petition, ivy2020.com. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is great.
Much success to you.
Thank you.